I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to March, you don't need a bracket to see all the madness. It is a mad world out there. Hello from our San Francisco bureau. On the eve of another big Tuesday primary extravaganza tomorrow. Some may dare call it super. 5 states are voting in the Republican and Democratic contests. At stake, lots of delegates and potentially big batches of momentum. Over the past 72 hours, protesters at Donald Trump's events have collided with Trump's supporters in Chicago, St. Louis, and Dayton. That has become not just the main story, but the dominant story of all the campaigns in both parties in the last 72 hours. Here's a recap of the weekend from our most recent episode of The Circus, the Showtime show we produce in conjunction with Bloomberg Politics.
Donald Trump was interrupted at a rally in Missouri. Police say there were 32 people who were arrested there in St. Louis.
I can't breathe, man. I can't breathe. Are they out?
And another Trump event is coming up shortly in Chicago. Folks already in the room for that.
There are hundreds, maybe even thousands of protesters on hand. The security does not have a handle on the situation here.
Tonight's rally will be postponed until another day. Thank you very much. And please go in peace.
This is becoming violent. There is pushing and shoving going on inside this arena. It is total chaos.
Donald Trump joins me now live on the phone. Mr. Trump, do you believe that you have done anything to create a tone where this kind of violence would be encouraged?
I don't take responsibility. Nobody's been hurt at our rallies.
Do you regret saying any of those things about punching protesters, sending them out on stretchers?
No, I don't regret it at all. I will say we've had tremendous success with people. You know, popularity that we have in the rallies themselves is love. I mean, it's a love fest.
I have to ask you just for clarification, you have no regrets about anything that you have said?
We have had great success. And frankly, I think we did a good job tonight. I think a lot of people are giving us a lot of credit.
Before we begin, I want to say a few words about what happened in Chicago last night.
Donald Trump has created a toxic environment.
The encouragement of violence and aggression is not only wrong, but dangerous.
Donald Trump has got to be loud and clear and tell his supporters that violence at rallies is not what America is about, and to end it.
I still, at this moment, continue to intend to support the Republican nominee, but it's getting harder every day.
And you know, as we campaign, we have protesters. But unlike Donald Trump, I don't ask people in the audience to punch them in the face.
I will call up Carrier, the president, because I have to do it myself. I know it's not. And to think I had such an easy life. What do I need this for?
Today in Hickory, North Carolina, Trump appeared with his best friend and supporter, Chris Christie, and insisted that the coverage about violence at his rallies was getting blown out of proportion.
No violence. No, you know how many people have been hurt at our rallies? I think like basically none, other than I guess maybe somebody got hit once or something, but there's no violence. And I'll tell you what, we go and these things are so incredible. It's a movement and it's a love fest and we love each other and we're gonna do so well. I'm a peace-loving person, folks. See? Yep. I'm a peace-loving. We love peace.
At another Trump event later in the day in Tampa, Sarah Palin blamed the protesters and the lamestream media.
What we don't have time for is all that petty, punk-ass little thuggery stuff that's been going on with these quote-unquote protesters.
Amazing how much this is dominating every piece of coverage for the year leading up to tomorrow. So is Trump helped or hurt by the events of the last 3 or 4 days in terms of winning the nomination?
Well, I don't know whether any of this will hurt him in terms of his supporters. That I don't know. I do know that to the extent that there is an anti-Trump movement, that this is a galvanizing moment for that movement. There are many Republicans who have thought Donald Trump would be a disaster in the general election. There are many Republicans who have thought that Donald Trump would be potentially split the party in various ways, ruin the Republican Party, ruin the Republican brand. I think a lot of establishment Republicans watching TV on Friday, seeing how he has reacted since Friday, not only not apologizing, not trying to calm things down, but in some ways inciting things to a greater degree. I think there are a lot. It's galvanized the anti-Trump movement. They may not be able to stop him, but if there's a way to stop him, there are a lot of Republicans going now. We don't want Chicago 68 in Cleveland this summer. We don't want to have a nominee who's not just going to lose the general election, but who's going to incite this kind of violence on the streets in America in 2016.
I don't know how much it might change the activity tomorrow. I think it'd make it more likely that John Kasich will win Ohio.
Maybe.
And I think it makes it more likely that the establishment will find a way to try to take the nomination away from him at the convention if he doesn't get a majority.
I agree. I agree with that. I think that I just feel like there was certainly for a lot of casual viewers of politics, but more importantly, I think for this establishment, they already didn't want Trump, but there was a sense of urgency now in the voice of establishment Republicans that was not there before, having seen just the utter chaos and the way in which Trump is not only, as I say, not backing away, not trying to ameliorate it, but in fact, in many ways, doubling down.
It will cause some people to turn to Ted Cruz if it gets down to that choice within the more establishment wing of the party, because Trump behaved over the weekend, Friday night in his phoners with cable news, and then on the Sunday shows. He behaved with no finesse. He simply said, basically, I bear no responsibility for this. I think that worries some people that he doesn't have enough finesse to win a general.
He's again, I know that I just heard the bell, but he has suggested that his supporters should go to Sanders rallies and potentially cause trouble. He's talked about how he might pay the legal bills of the guy who sucker punched that African-American protester. Those are ugly words, ugly things to be doing. Not only no finesse, but just the wrong thing to do. Donald Trump's Republican opponents are still saying that Trump is at least partly to blame for that violence we've just been talking about, all of them. John Kasich said that Trump's creating a toxic atmosphere and lamented today that his kids are watching this campaign and are horrified. Marco Rubio says he's stoking voters' angers for political gain. And while Ted Cruz is still saying they'll vote for the eventual GOP nominee, even if it's Donald Trump, he told Meet the Press on Sunday that his party's frontrunner has created, quote, an environment that only encourages this sort of nastiness, end quote. House Speaker Paul Ryan today said that candidates must accept responsibility for conflict at their campaign events. Mark, my question for you, of the 3 Republican candidates now challenging Trump, who is dealing with this in the right way, not just in terms of like the ethical right thing, but also in terms of ways that might give them some political edge?
I think Kasich has the best chance to benefit from it. I don't think Marco Rubio is going to find a way to win Florida tomorrow, probably, and he'll likely be out, so he doesn't stand much chance to benefit. He also has just been kind of agonizing over how to react to this. Kasich has reacted relatively consistently to it, and I think it fits with his brand best of the other 2.
Well, I agree with you. I think they've all handled it pretty well. I actually think, comparatively speaking, Cruz potentially benefits more. Cruz is more likely, I think, to be the nominee than Kasich because he has more delegates. Cruz has more concerns to assuage on the part of establishment Republicans, and Cruz has spoken out very strongly about it over the weekend. I think for establishment Republicans who are trying to get comfortable with the idea of Ted Cruz, he did a lot this weekend to make them think, we don't like Ted Cruz, but he's rising to the occasion here.
This is a volatile situation, obviously. It depends on how Trump does tomorrow and how the others do. It also depends on how much this stuff goes on. Does Trump modulate his behavior at all? Does he change the rules? I don't know why he wouldn't call the young man who was punched in the face. Why not just call him and say, I wonder how you're doing. I hope you're okay.
I don't think he does not, I think, on the basis, again, what we were talking about before, he does not seem to have a fingertip feel for the situation.
He does for his supporters, but not for a wider audience.
Yes, and for the people who are now freaking out over this, he's not doing anything to make them feel any more comfortable.
He could sweep tomorrow. He could win every state. Yeah. And there was a chance before that if he swept every state, a lot of establishment people would get in line, and he could start coasting to the nomination in every respect.
Very hard.
That will not happen now. That will not happen, and now someone's going to benefit, and not sure who. All right. This topic of Donald Trump and the protesters is a pretty easy target for the Democrats. At a CNN town hall in Ohio last night, Hillary Clinton claimed Trump's rhetoric amounted to, quote, political arson, while Bernie Sanders pulled out the old pathological liar line that he used before regarding Donald Trump. Here are some of their comments.
It's clear that Donald Trump is running a very cynical campaign, pitting groups of Americans against one another. He is trafficking in hate and fear. He is playing to our worst instincts rather than our angels of our better nature. He actually incites violence in the way that he urges his audience on, talking about punching people, offering to pay legal bills.
Mr. Trump said that he is prepared to pay the legal costs of an individual who sucker punched somebody at a recent event. What that means is that Donald Trump is literally inciting violence with his supporters. That is an outrage, and I would hope that Mr. Trump tones it down big time and tells his supporters that violence is not acceptable in the American political process.
So, John, is this a smart fight for Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton to pick?
We've not had very many questions that are easier to answer than this one. I think, let's be clear. They're not really picking a fight, and I know you don't really mean it that way. This is a big moment. It's happened. They're reacting to it, and they're reacting to it in the same way Republicans are reacting to it, which is to try to, point out that Trump is doing something here that's really potentially dangerous and wrong. So, but do I think they get political advantage out of it? Sure. The extent to which they make Trump look utterly unacceptable. Makes this stuff, and they're standing up to him right now, is stuff you're going to see replayed out in the general election to their benefit, I think.
One of the realities of the competition that Bernie Sanders faces now is he has to prove to Democrats that he'd be a stronger general election candidate. There's some polling that suggests that he might be.
Yep.
But he needs to
which he cites frequently.
He needs to prove to Democrats that he could take Trump on more effectively than Hillary Clinton. So this is, to some extent, an audition for the general election, assuming that Trump's the nominee.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a rare moment, it's just worth noting as we move on from this topic and on to another block of the show. It's a rare moment of national unity. We've rarely seen bipartisan. You play what Hillary Clinton had to say, what Bernie Sanders had to say, and what the Republican candidates had to say over the weekend about this. They were all they all could have said they were interchangeable in their condemnation.
Sarah Palin's on the other side.
Yes, it's true. Well, she's never part of the unity, at least in the broadest sense with Democrats. Up next, he's back. Why Mitt Romney is returning to the stump today with John Kasich. We'll be right back ourselves. Mitt Romney is out on the campaign trail with John Kasich today in Ohio, including this stop in North Canton this afternoon. It's not exactly an endorsement because Romney's whole thing is to vote for the candidates, whichever candidate could best stop Trump in any given state. But he also didn't mention Trump at this event. He talked instead about Kasich's record on jobs in the Buckeye State. Romney has also recorded robocalls for Kasich and for Marco Rubio. So, Mark, my question for you is, what does this mean? What is Romney's decision to go out with Kasich today? What does that mean?
Well, I suspect he was invited, and he still wants Kasich to win Ohio. He still, I think, would like Rubio to win Florida, but he can read public polls as well as anyone else. I continue to be stunned, as I know you are, at the lack of people getting ready to coalesce around Kasich. I think it's possible Mitt Romney will endorse him Wednesday morning, and other people might. But I still hear so little from establishment Republicans saying, hey, we can read the public polls. It looks like Rubio might lose Florida. Kasich might win Ohio. Let's go all in for Kasich on Wednesday. I think there'll be some of that, but not nearly as much as Kasich would like or will need to make this a three-way race. You
and I have discussed this on this show and offline extensively. It freaks me out. I don't really understand. I really find it utterly. But he's a governor and a successful governor, politically and substantively successful. I can't imagine if you're a governor or a former governor in the Republican Party, what choice is there right now? Marco Rubio is almost certainly dead. You've got Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, or John Kasich. Why are you not already with Kasich?
I'll say again, if this were a three-person race in the beginning, let's say it was a year ago, and the only three people who got in the race were Trump, Kasich, and Cruz, the whole establishment would be for Kasich.
And as you know, you hear Republicans who say, well, John Kasich's too much of a moderate, he's too much of a liberal. You know, Donald Trump is arguing for expanding, he's for the Medicaid expansion, he's for a version of Obamacare, he wants to start a trade war. Like, he doesn't talk about entitlement, he doesn't want to change Social Security.
And don't get me started on electability. Who looks like they're more likely to win a general election of the three of them?
If you're a Republican establishmentarian, health care, deficit reduction, and trade,
forget what
Trump
happens,
is horrible on all of them.
Forget what happens in Missouri and Illinois and North Carolina. Just assume, as the polls suggest, Rubio loses, Kasich wins. What happens Tuesday night into Wednesday will tell the tale of whether there's a two-person race or a three-person race. But the fact that it might simply be declared a two-person race is extraordinary.
Kasich says he's going on, but he's not going to have that much money. He's going to need support.
I was raised to believe Ohio was an important state. All right, new polls that suggest that Donald Trump, barring any late-breaking surprises, is going to have another super Tuesday tomorrow. He's held consistent leads in Florida and North Carolina polls, and to a lesser extent in what little Missouri polling there is. He's also leading in Illinois, where a poll from NBC News, Marist, and the Wall Street Journal says Ted Cruz and John Kasich are in a tight race for second, but Trump has a lead. In Ohio, however, a new Monmouth poll out joins others that have regularly showed that Trump is losing to Kasich, although some show them close. The hometown boy is up 40 to 35 in this latest poll. Again, that's more reflective of some of the polling. John, at this point, based on everything we know, who on this planet, after Donald J. Trump, billionaire, is the second most likely Republican nominee?
Well, I can construct a case for why John Kasich is, but again, I'm a simple man, and so I look at the delegate count right now. Math matters a lot. Right now, John Kasich has very few delegates. Ted Cruz has a lot more delegates, and
may have even more gap after tomorrow.
And may have more of a gap after tomorrow, and he also has demonstrated ability to raise money, which will matter over fighting out this long fight. I think that Cruz will have a very hard time facing off with Trump or Trump and Kasich in a lot of the states down the calendar. But I will say, between the two of them, who do I pick? I think Ted Cruz is more likely.
I have to amend what I just said. If Kasich wins Ohio, he'll have more delegates after tomorrow, without a doubt, because the winner take all.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because the winner take all, he will.
I'm not sure about that.
Take all, he will.
We have to do
Look,
some math.
Here's the thing. If Kasich can't fight his way into a three-way in the narrative, then it is Cruz. And I continue to believe, more than you do, I believe, that even if Cruz doesn't do particularly well tomorrow, even if Trump wins all five, I believe that once it becomes one-on-one, Cruz could start winning. He could start beating Trump in states. And when and if that happened, then the answer is obviously Cruz. And I think that's the most likely way to stop Trump right now, is he starts losing contests to Ted Cruz.
Right. Well, look, I mean, one of the
things, he could do in a three-way as well, but more likely in the two-way.
In either case. Look, I mean, one thing that we are having to learn and have to repeat over and over again, which is that this race is super fluid and super volatile. The thing, as much as we'd seen violence and conflict building up at some Trump rallies on the edges, and some people had sensed it, what happened on Friday and Saturday was kind of a game changer. And given it how Donald Trump is and how he behaves, what's going to happen next week? I don't know. I mean, right today in California, where we're sitting, Trump versus Cruz in a one-on-one, I say Trump wins.
And he's announced another
a week from now?
Trump's announced another press conference tomorrow, so maybe he's got another endorsement in his back pocket.
Maybe. All right, when we come back, Hillary Clinton's messaging conundrum. We'll explore that right after these words from our sponsors.
After Hillary Clinton's shocking loss in the Michigan primary, her campaign said she was going to sharpen her economic message. That, of course, would be particularly important for the Midwestern states, such as Illinois, Ohio, and Missouri, which are voting tomorrow. John, the Clinton campaign said she was going to talk more about her economic message. Is she doing that?
She's doing it a little bit. She's tried to respond on the trade front. She's had a couple events where she's kind of weighed in a more forceful way on TPP, but she has, found herself increasingly kind of wandering off into talking about other things that have not allowed her to be as on point as we were given to believe she was going to be after the Michigan upset.
Some of the things that have happened are just the way the media covers things. She made a mistake in talking about Nancy Reagan and AIDS. That got a lot of coverage. Right. The Trump thing overtook. But I think it is the most cautionary thing I've seen in a a while for the Clinton campaign, which has largely been doing pretty well lately, which is she's talking about the economy in such a muddled way. She's basically, they're trying to claim her trade position is misunderstood. No, it's understood, I think, a little all too well.
Yeah.
And if this is her speaking clearly about her economic agenda, she's going to have a lot tougher time winning a general election than she needs to.
Well, the only thing I'd say, that the only caveat I would have there is that, a general election, she actually will get to speak her heart, and her heart is really not probably where her economic message is right now. This was true in 2008. We saw both Obama and Clinton veer to the left when the race got to these kinds of states. This is one example of a place where something you and I have discussed many times, that Bernie Sanders is actually in a better position relative to the Democratic base than Hillary Clinton is. He can talk about trade as a full-throated protectionist, right? Because he actually believes that. She cannot go there with that kind of clarity because she does not believe it.
But I'm just talking about basic blocking and tackling candidate performance. She is in a danger of losing some of these primaries tomorrow, in part because they failed to execute, and she has failed to execute what they said they would do, which is a crisp, clean, and delicious clear message on the economy.
Yeah, but
it's not there. I don't know what she thinks she's getting done by talking about trade the way she is.
But again, I think that's hard for her because the truth is that the kinds of things she would actually say and would say in a general election would say as president are not the kind of things that she
sent her out to talk about it and
voters.
claim it was going to be a clear message.
Well, that's probably a good point. All right, here is a big, large, huge number: 797. That's the number of delegates that are at stake in tomorrow's Democratic contest in 5 states. Polls have been showing Hillary Clinton with a strong lead over Sanders in states like Florida and North Carolina. The race appears to be tightening in the Midwest. In Illinois, Bernie has been trying to use Mayor Rahm Emanuel's unpopularity to his advantage. A new CBS News online tracking poll shows Sanders moving ahead, 48 to 46. And in Ohio, a new Quinnipiac poll shows Clinton's lead shrinking to within the margin of error. She's up 51 to 46%. So my question for you, Mark, is where, looking at the 5 states in play, which of them does Sanders have a chance of winning?
Looks like Illinois, but I think he could also maybe win Ohio, maybe win Missouri. And if he won 3 of 5, that would be, as Bill Clinton would say, a big deal. 2 of 5 and a lot of delegates is a hold. It allows him to go forward and try to win in some of these other states that are going to be better for him than the 5 tomorrow. 1 of 5 or 0. It's a very, very tough time for him to get any momentum coming out of tomorrow, even with a lot of delegates.
Right. Look, I mean, she's going to win Florida probably by a crushing margin, and she will win North Carolina pretty comfortably, I suspect, which means that she again will come out with a net delegate lead, a net delegate bump out of tomorrow night. I think Sanders could win the 3 states you said. All of them are going to be close. He's not going to win by a lot in Ohio. He's not going to win by a lot in Illinois. I think Missouri is the place he probably has the best chance of winning for sure. But even then, not going to win by 20 points. So she's going to win in delegates. He could win in states, but again, you look down the calendar, and he needs. You're right. He needs to do better than 1. 2 would be okay. 3 would be very big.
He needs a hold tomorrow, and a hold is 2 or more wins, and close to parity in delegates, or as close as possible to move forward. All right. When we come back, Marco Rubio makes a final pitch in Florida. We'll talk to his comms director, Alex Conant, about what's going on in the Sunshine State and more right after this.
Joining us now is a man who is hoping not to get wasted away in Margaritaville. He's hoping he's doing everything possible to help his boss, Marco Rubio, win the Florida primary tomorrow. Alex Conant, communications director for the Rubio campaign, joins us now from Washington, D.C. Alex, good day. Alex, just give us a little sense of what's going on down there. There's been now a remarkably consistent string of polls that show your boss pretty far behind in that race. Why should we not believe those polls?
Well, because the polls have been wrong throughout this entire campaign. If the polls were right, then Hillary Clinton would have won Michigan last week, but instead she didn't. Bernie Sanders won Michigan last week. And even here in Florida, we've seen the polls all over the place. Last week, we saw several polls showing that this race was in the single digits. We know for a fact that the early vote and the absentee ballots are very much in our favor. So, I don't put a lot of stock in the polls at this stage of the race. We feel confident. We feel like we've got momentum going into the election tomorrow. I think on Wednesday, a lot of pollsters are going to have a lot of explaining to do.
Alex, get a little wonky with us and just give us some examples of either individual polls or things that characterize all the polls to explain to people why you're confident that data that you're seeing in public is wrong. What is wrong with it? Are they sampling the wrong people? Are they failing to take into account elements that you think show the race closer? What?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, some of the polls have shown the race being very close, including the Monmouth poll last week, which is a very respected poll that showed Marco leading by a lot amongst the early votes and the absentee votes. And that's consistent with all the internal data that we've seen in terms of who's already voted and where those votes are. I mean, we know that there's record voting turnout in Miami-Dade County, Broward County, counties that are very good for Marco. And then some of the other polls, this is a closed primary, and not all of the polls take that into account. I seriously doubt that many of these polls have Spanish speakers doing some of the surveying. Obviously, that would impact the results in a state like Florida, and especially when you consider how heavily Spanish speakers are likely to favor Marco in the primary. So, I think that there's a lot of factors at play here. I can tell you that on the ground, it feels very, very good for Marco. On the air, it feels very good for Marco. If you look at all the information flow on the TV, local TV, and the paid TV that all the outside groups are doing, I mean, everything is going in our favor. It feels like we're going to win tomorrow. So I can't explain the current polls other than to say I think that on Wednesday morning, a lot of pollsters are going to have some egg on their face, especially after they got Michigan so wrong just a week ago.
Alex, Senator Rubio over the weekend was said that he was finding it increasingly difficult to say that he would support the Republican nominee if the Republican nominee is Donald Trump. Given all the things that have now transpired, ranging from the various clashes they've had in the debates, the belittlement that Trump has shown towards your boss, the stuff that Marco Rubio was referring to or was driven by in that comment, given the violence at these events and Trump's role in that, what is it that's holding him back from saying he wouldn't support Donald Trump? What would Donald Trump have to do to make Marco Rubio finally say enough?
Well, I mean, two words, right? Hillary Clinton. I mean, Marco Rubio does not want Hillary Clinton to be the president of the United States. And so I think that's why he's so hesitant to say he wouldn't support the Republican nominee, because it's not supporting the Republican nominee means you're almost by default supporting the Democrat, and Hillary Clinton cannot be president of the United States. But as he said over the weekend, Mr. Trump's statements over the last couple of days especially, and when you've seen what his campaign is doing to America, all of the violence at some of his events, violence that he has not condemned, violence that, in some ways he has encouraged by urging his supporters to beat people up, to saying that he'll cover their legal fees. I mean, when you see that and you see the impact it's having, not just on our party, but on our nation, yeah, it's getting harder by the day to continue to say that you'd support him in the general election.
Alex, I understand that he doesn't want Hillary Clinton to be the president of the United States, but you just basically said, and I think that Senator Rubio is suggesting that Trump has been inciting violence at his rallies. So that's something Hillary Clinton has never done, and it seems to be, for a lot of people, outside the bounds of what's acceptable political behavior. Again, I ask you, what does Donald Trump have to do for Marco Rubio finally to say, hey, this is enough, he's gone too far?
Yeah, I mean, John, it's a fair question, and as Marco said this weekend, it gets harder by the day to defend saying that you'd support him in the general election. I mean, this is the conundrum that we face. This is the problem facing the Republican Party. I don't think it's just a question for Marco. I think it's a question for all Republicans, and it's why we know that Donald Trump will never be president of the United States, because he will not win a general election, because there are so many Republicans who already have said that they will not support him in a general election. That's the problem facing the country right now, is that the front runner for the Republican nomination is somebody who is wholly unacceptable to, I would argue, a majority of Republican voters, and that's a big problem.
Alex, if no Republican gets a majority of the delegates before the convention, what should determine who the nominee is?
It should be the delegates, obviously. The delegates at the convention would pick them.
How should the delegates decide?
Well, look, I mean, right now, Mark, I'm 100% focused on Florida. I haven't given any thought to Cleveland and how the delegates there should decide. I concede that at this moment, there is no candidate on a trajectory to having 1237, and I think that the question that you raise will become a more urgent one as we get closer to the convention. But as of now, as of you and me just talking this afternoon, I'm totally focused on Florida and winning those 99 delegates tomorrow.
Alex, how would you respond to the argument that Donald Trump, if he had the plurality of delegates, how would you respond to the argument that Donald Trump would make if he said, look, I have more delegates, way more delegates than anybody else, or more delegates than any other Republican candidate. I don't have the majority, but I have the plurality. Therefore, the will of the people is that I'm the one who should be the nominee. How do you respond to that?
Well, it takes 50% plus one vote to win the Republican nomination. You have to have 1237 to be the Republican nominee. If nobody has that, then it's up to the delegates in Cleveland to pick the Republican nominee. And there is plenty of precedent for this. I mean, it's not, if you look back at the history of the party, it's not unusual for the party. It's not commonplace in modern times, but it's not unheard of that the delegates at the convention would pick the nominee. And it's not always the one who has the plurality going. I think there's examples of them picking, the third place. I believe in 1940, the candidate with the third number of delegates ended up emerging as the nominee. Who knows what's going to happen this year? We got to get through Florida, Ohio, the other states tomorrow. A lot of states have yet to vote. We got a long way until we get to Cleveland. But I think if no candidate has 1237 and we go to Cleveland, it'll be up to the delegates there to decide. Obviously, I mean that's how the system works.
All right, Alex Conant, thank you. Good luck tomorrow. Coming up,
Thanks,
Silicon Valley Republican donor and former Mitt Romney supporter who's not chosen a side in this cycle as of yet. We'll ask him why after this. And if you're watching us in Washington, D.C., you can also listen to us on the radio at Bloomberg 99.1 FM. We will be right back.
Joining us now, Sun Microsystems CEO Scott McNealy. He is a longtime Silicon Valley Republican donor. He is not supporting any presidential campaign in this cycle, at least so far. He joins us from down the road a piece in Stanford. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. I did support Carly, and I think that just extends my long-running streak of not supporting anybody who wins.
Okay, I stand corrected. You supported someone from your industry, but now our candidate list. Let me ask you of the remaining candidates in this race, the four who are still in the race. Do any of them give you hope that they would be a strong nominee and a strong president?
I think any of the four are far superior in terms of CEOs. I say most CEOs are 1,000 times better than the best politician in terms of understanding what makes America great. But I'm a little biased, having been on the inside and seeing how the system can work incorrectly and how it can work properly. But I'm just worried that it's just fascinating to me that when I grew up, socialist was one of the bad things you could call somebody, and now we have millions of people supporting that. And I think integrity and character and honesty and transparency are all things that used to be something we tried to look for in politicians, and we just don't seem to care about that anymore. So I think there's four very reasonable, certainly three very reasonable candidates, and a huge wild card in the Donald, obviously.
Scott, let's talk about the wild card. Let me ask you just for a quiz. How many people among your friends in Silicon Valley, how many people do you know who are Trump supporters?
None of them overtly. They are out there. I think all of them are in the camp that I'm in. We've got raccoons in the attic, and who's most likely to have a chance of getting the raccoons out as opposed to being part of the problem. And I think the Republicans and the Democrats have been part of the problem. The Democrats way more than the Republicans, but nobody's moving the ball in the right direction. Everybody's just inching it in the wrong direction, right. Some faster than others. So here's the issue. Maybe Trump is very smart and understands that if you tell anybody what you're really going to go do, you're going to end up, there's no way I could get elected, because I'd tell everybody what government sectors I wanted to shut down. I wanted to take out federal government unions. Right. I would want to get government out of health care and education, and nobody'd vote for me. Donald is doing quite the opposite. So,
well, let me just ask you though, right? So he's pretty negative on immigration. He's pretty much an out-front protectionist. He doesn't want to reform entitlements in any meaningful way, and he's been in favor of single-payer health care. Which of those issues is not a deal killer for you? None of those things line up anywhere close to your views, as I understand them.
Well, so if I had to pick, would I pick out of the four Donald? Maybe, maybe not. He's actually aggressive enough that he might actually be able to get something done if he, executes on czars. The guy who's probably the most aligned with me is getting back to the Constitution, and that's Ted Cruz. But can he move Congress? Can he get it done in Congress? Does he have enough momentum to go get that done? Anything's better than what I see on the other side, for sure. And that's because I believe, as a libertarian, that your personal financial freedoms and liberties are critical to ensuring that you have personal liberties and freedoms. And if you don't have financial freedoms and liberties, which is not what the left is all about, then I don't think you end up down the road with personal freedoms and liberties. That's why I'm anybody on the right at this point.
Scott, you've got some kindred spirits in Silicon Valley amongst other executives and people who get involved in politics, but there are a lot of liberals as well out here. In a general election that saw Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, how do you think Silicon Valley elite support would divide?
It's interesting. Somebody asked me, why do people who do so well in a capitalist environment want to vote for a socialist set of leadership? And there's multiple guesses. And although some people have told me, a lot of people have told me they want to vote for a more socialist and progressive tax and income equalization strategy, because they want to buy off the people so that they don't revolt. And I find that kind of revolting, that we think that you can buy off the plebeians out there, and that's just sickening to me. I don't think that's great for self-esteem, great for stability, and it's certainly not good for people to get something that they didn't earn. Other people are just feeling guilty that they did so well, and my view of that is, if you feel guilty about that, give your money away and do that, because you're going to be far more effective than the government.
Scott, leaving your own preferences aside, you're a pretty good, keen observer. Who do you predict the next president of the United States will be?
Oh gosh, I don't predict the future. I
What's your gut?
certainly wouldn't have. My gut is I'm fairly pessimistic, because I thought we had the best human on the planet to vote for, one of the greatest humans I've ever had a chance to vote for, Mitt Romney, and he got beat by a second-term Barack Obama, who is just heading us down to a $20 trillion debt. It's just, I don't get it. So, I'm hoping the world's eyes have been open, and maybe that's one of the things that Donald Trump has done, is gotten a lot more people engaged in the conversation.
Okay, Scott, thanks very much for joining us. Always good to talk to you. Up next, a reporter covering Donald Trump, who has seen a lot of his rallies up close and personal. NBC News' Katy joins us from out on the campaign trail after these words from our sponsors.
Bimbo, dog.
Fat pig.
Real quotes from Donald Trump about women.
A person who is very flat-chested is very hard to be a 10.
I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers.
Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that?
She had the height, she had the beauty. She was crazy. But these are minor details.
If you believe America deserves better, vote against Donald Trump. Our Principles PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That was a new ad from the anti-Trump super PAC called Our Principles. And coming to us now from a Trump event in Vienna, Ohio, Katy Tur, NBC's correspondent covering Trump's campaign. Katy, good to see you again. We saw you on Friday. A lot has happened since we checked in with you Friday afternoon. Now we're checking back in with you Monday. Give us a sense of what the tone is like out there today with Donald Trump after such an eventful and in some ways ugly 72 hours.
It's as it has always been. It's just as bombastic and aggressive and denying of the violence around it as it has been. But as you said, it's gotten a lot more intense in the past few days. After we spoke on Friday, violence broke out in Chicago. Blood was shed in Chicago as protesters and supporters threw punches on the floor of an arena that Donald Trump was supposed to take the stage at. After that, Secret Service surrounded him in Dayton, Ohio, as somebody tried to jump one of the bike fences to get to Donald Trump on stage. People were pepper sprayed in Kansas City. There were nativism taunts going on in Cleveland. And today we've seen more efforts to disrupt every Donald Trump rally that he's had so far today. The most interesting thing that I'm seeing coming out of the news cycle today and out of this campaign today is the potential news that North Carolina police are investigating or looking into filing charges against Donald Trump for inciting a riot. Right now there's some dissent. A number of outlets are saying that they are filing charges, they are looking into it, and some outlets are saying that they're not. But right now, what the reasoning behind that is what happened in Fayetteville last week when a 78-year-old man sucker punched a protester who was leaving the arena, and then afterwards basically threatened to kill him if he saw him again. That man was arrested. Well, on Sunday on Meet the Press, Donald Trump told Chuck Todd that he was considering paying that man's legal bills, looking into paying the attacker's legal bills, not the guy who was sucker punched. And that is really emblematic of the tone of this entire campaign right now. If you're with us, you're great. If you're against us, then you're in the wrong no matter what. Certainly these protesters are trying to disrupt these rallies, but it is a whole new level when you see a candidate for the presidency of the United States offer to pay the legal bills of somebody who threatened to kill another person.
Katy, I want to ask you about Trump and Kasich. They have a long relationship that's interesting during this campaign. They've rarely gone at each other. Donald Trump, if he does win Florida, if he could find a way to win Ohio, he could end this thing. And yet the attacks on Kasich, they've been about his record as governor. He criticized him for watching the Golf Channel and not watching MSNBC. But I'm just wondering if you have any sense of why Donald Trump has not gone personal after John Kasich. Why no caustic nickname? Why no attempt to take him down the way he's effectively taken down everybody else standing in his way?
That's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure why. There had been rumors floating around that Donald Trump was looking into potentially running with John Kasich. Those were the rumors before things got really tight here in Ohio. But he isn't going after him personally so far, and that could be because Kasich is such a popular governor here in this state. And I think the campaign knows that it would not go over well among the voters here. It wouldn't be a good idea to insult the man that they like in order to gain votes, because it would most likely work against Donald Trump's favor. Right now, voters seem to like John Kasich quite a lot, but they also seem to like Donald Trump. So I think he's trying to go after his record a little bit harder instead of going after the personal attacks in order to bring voters away on a more substantial level than he has gone after in the past with somebody like Marco Rubio. I think Donald Trump is also very good at sensing weakness, and he's sensed the weakness in Marco Rubio and maybe acting a little bit robotic, as Governor Christie called him out for on the debate stage. He sensed weakness with Ted Cruz, with the fraud charges, and maybe the potential not trustworthy factor of Ted Cruz that some people say that has resonated with them about that particular candidate. John Kasich is pretty well respected and pretty well liked, so it might just be that he doesn't have a very obvious glaring weakness that Donald Trump can go after, but it is much closer here than it had been in the past, and that's why you're seeing Donald Trump here in Ohio tonight instead of in Miami. Originally they were planning on being in Doral tonight, but they changed it last minute yesterday and are having this rally here. That is an indication of just how close it is here and how much Donald Trump is trying to win this state.
All right, Katy Short, thank you for being with us again. We'll be right back with some ideas about what to call tomorrow's primary contests after this. Mark, we come to the end of another day, so I ask you, as I must, who won it?
Governor John Kasich of Ohio. Some new polling data suggesting he's got a small but stable lead in Ohio, and he's proving yet again that he's not afraid of Donald Trump. He is not deer in the headlights, and that's going to come in handy if he does win Ohio and goes forward.
I will say that I think just on the basis of the polling, it looks like Bernie Sanders has kind of won this day on the Democratic side. Suddenly people are starting to wake up to the fact that Sanders could be in contention in Illinois, could be in contention in Ohio.
Forgetting there's only one poll that counts, and that is tomorrow,
on election day. All right, by our count, there have been two so-called Super Tuesdays, or days that people call Super Tuesday. But tomorrow, you might have noticed, is also a Tuesday, and it looks like it's going to be super, maybe even super duper. So what should we call this? We had decided to ask our friends in local news to help us figure it out.
Good morning, Idaho.
Good morning, welcome back. It's the Sprint to Super Tuesday 3, if you want to call it that.
Is the Sprint to Super Tuesday 3?
People are calling tomorrow Super Tuesday 3.
The Sprint to what they call Super Tuesday 3.
It's the Sprint to Super Tuesday number 3.
Super Tuesday number 3.
In your voice, your vote. It is the Sprint to Super Tuesday 3. Today it is the Sprint to Super Tuesday 3.
Today, it's the Sprint to Super Tuesday Part 3.
They're calling it Super Tuesday 3. You have to have a name for these sorts of things.
Just call it Election Day. All right, check out BloombergPolitics.com for all the latest 2016 updates, including a great piece by our colleague Sasha Eisenberg titled How to Steal a Nomination from Trump. Coming up on Bloomberg TV, Emily Chang talks to us. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.